What I have found with the thousands of people that I've coached in my own personal journey is having what I call a mastery morning is essential. And there's a few key things. A mastery morning sets you up to achieve 3 quick wins. Okay? You get a physical win, you get a mental win, you get a spiritual win.
Fellas, what's going on? Hope this episode finds you well, and I hope this episode leaves you better than when it found you. Today's episode is with Donovan Owens, and he's the founder of the Life is Reps community. He's a podcaster, a soon-to-be author, and someone who has just had success in his own life and is now all about helping guys like you to succeed as well. And it's a fantastic conversation. We really get tactical on this episode. You know, sometimes the interviews can get a little out there and a little philosophical. And I think that that's important to be able to have those conversations. And also we need conversations that can just give you the tools and give you the how-tos right here. And this is one of those. So I know that you're going to enjoy it. It's a really, really insightful conversation. Donovan is a fire starter, and it was an honor and privilege to have him. So enough of me, y'all. Let's get into today's episode with Donovan Owens. Donovan, welcome to the Modern Masculinity podcast. It's an honor and a privilege to have you here.
Yeah, man. Hey, thanks for having me. I've been looking forward to this since we scheduled it. So I'm glad we're here to do this right now.
Yeah, take us into your world as a man, as a provider, as a business owner, a father, a partner, all these roles that you play. I find that sometimes the quickest way to relate with guys is sort of to share like I'm going through that too, sort of thing. What sort of challenges or what sort of crosses, if you will, are you still carrying as a man today?
Man, that's a great question. And actually, I'll lead with I'm definitely an incomplete man and still on this growth path, even at 47 years old. And I love being on that path with all the challenges and everything that come with it. So I'll give a little context. I was a rebellious teenager because there were just things that with the way I was raised, which I was raised in a very loving household, but there was just some things that I questioned the way kind of society was at the time and even is now. Like I just question things and wonder like, where did these beliefs come from? And so in my teenage years, it led to me kind of acting out and searching for my own identity as a young man. And that led to a lot of trouble. I got into all kinds of things, like the gang activity, all the drugs, all the things. And there was actually a time where I ended up getting kicked out of high school because I got caught on lunch, smoking weed on lunch. And, they came and got me out of class and said, hey, we're going to put you in this special class where the troublemakers go, and you have to wear an orange shirt. And I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And at that age, I think I know more than any adult around me, right? I'm 16, 17 years old. So I was like, I'll just drop out. So I dropped out of high school when I was 17. And my mom, being the woman of faith that she is and the stability that she is, she shipped me off to my aunt's house. And when I was there, I got my driver's license. I graduated from high school. Like some things were put into order. And then I came back, 4 or 5 months later and got right back into, the same friends, the same activities. And so what I learned through that process early on was that the search for identity is sometimes very messy, very messy, and it leads to a lot of chaos. And so it goes a step further. I got married young, had 2 kids young. So by the time I was 21, I had 2 kids and I was married. And so I was married for 14 years. So there was a point about 7 years into that marriage where I knew that this is not the relationship I'm supposed to be in. And so I wrote it out for 7 years just because of all these things I had in my head, these questions like, what is society going to think? Like, what will my parents think? What will my kids think? And so I went through that and just stayed in it, but I became very distant in that relationship. And ultimately it got to a point where I picked up my ex-wife from work one day and I said, hey, you know what? I think this thing is over. And without hesitation, she said, I think so too. And it was just a conversation that we both avoided probably for 7 years that could have been had. But that moment led to the darkest moment of my life because I went into the only thing that I would know in my life as a depression. And so for 6 months, I was in this very dark place. And it led to me one day sitting on the edge of my bed with my pistol next to me, considering taking my own life. And remember, I have two daughters. So luckily, there was a moment in that dark space that I was in where the very spiritual thing happened. And I just saw the word gratitude floating down out of the sky. And remember, I had my pistol sitting next to me. It's sitting right on the bed. I have my right hand sitting on it. And then all of a sudden, this word gratitude starts to float through this whole situation that I'm in. And it comes down through my head, lands in my heart. And this is all like a visual thing that I'm going through. And I'm like, oh man. And then I can see both of my daughter's eyes looking at me. And so that moment changed my life right there. I had enough hardship. I've tried enough things that were like on my own without, the spiritual guidance and the systems. And I decided at that moment, if I'm going to do this life the way that I really want to do it, it's going to be important that I figure out how to be a man. And at this point, I'm like 33, 34 years old. How to actually be a man, how to tap into the mastery of what masculinity really is. And I was going to have to do that work myself. And so I got together, putting together what I call a system of values, principles, pillars, and mindsets to live by. And I've been refining that over the last 15 years. But without those hardships, I would have never considered that I needed to create my own systems in my life, or I would fall prey to the systems that have been created for me. So that's the long answer to your question. There's a lot of hardship in there that created where I am today, which I'm blessed to be.
And I'm sure, guys see you. You've got a new podcast. I think there's a book in the works. I don't. Either there was or is. Like you're putting out all this good in the world, and I think that the challenge that sort of gets created is that there's this image that you've also got it all figured out still. And you said at the beginning you said you're an incomplete man, and I'm curious for you, because so much of the challenge that guys go through is that we think that we have to be this perfect hardened image, and that's so much of the insecurities and shame comes from us thinking that everybody else doesn't have these issues, everybody else isn't going through this. What part of that story still catches up with you today, or do those things that you were forced to deal with back then, do they still pop up today, or how do you find yourself navigating some of those challenges 15 years later?
Yeah, no doubt. One of the masculine mindsets that I came up with is called healthy humility, and another one is ergonomic ego, and those are things that I have to deal with every day and approach every day. Otherwise, what happens is, by default, my ego is very unhealthy. There's desires, there's distractions, there's lust, there's all these things that, as a man, that I get to wrestle with. And even the darkest time in my life that I told you about, where I'm sitting on the side of my bed, those thoughts still come back to me sometimes, where it's like, man, what is this really all about? And am I a good enough man? Do I matter to the people around me? And these are very real questions I ask myself when no one's around. And my best answer for you is that daily, it's important for me to connect to the energy of mastery and masculinity. Otherwise, my default is not healthy for me or anyone around me. And I've recognized that. So I'm not immune to the challenges at all. And every day I realize I'm incomplete and that there's work to be done.
Well, I'm glad you bring that up, because I realize that in my sort of inner work and journey, I get to this place sometimes where I'm like, damn, I thought I got past that. I thought I dealt with that. I thought I left that in the past. I thought I overcame blank. I thought I, stopped that habit. And to your point, it's like, no, you sort of have to continue to beat it every day. I'm reminded of my college roommate, to get into AA and go sober, right where we were like roommates, and it was like a big thing. And since then, he's been, I don't know what, almost 20, whatever that is, years sober. It's really interesting that for them, they say like they just do it one day at a time. And at the beginning, I didn't realize the how profound that was or how significant that was. But it's sort of what you're saying, in that, like, every day you got to wake up and reconnect to. You're talking about these energies that you're reconnecting to. It's a daily thing. It's not something that you do once and then all of a sudden it's done.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. I gave somebody this example the other day where you'll notice that a lot of the topics I talk about are mastery and masculinity because those have been the things that those energies have changed my life. And I call them energies because they're not things that you can achieve them, right? Every day there's a commitment to wake up and tap into and connect to the energy of those things to be that man. And so I told somebody the other day, I was like, yo, like Michael Jordan was a masterful basketball player. When I think about Michael Jordan now, he's no longer a master at playing basketball because he doesn't connect and tap into that energy. He doesn't practice that every day. And again, I'm assuming I don't know what his lifestyle is, but just to understand the context here, the choice to wake up and connect every day to whatever it is that adds the most value to your life and your world around you is an important choice. And if that choice isn't made, then defaults happen. And most humans that I know don't really enjoy their own defaults. And so that's what puts us in a place where there's always work that we're doing. What I found is the quicker that I could realize that there's going to be work every day, that's when I could start to find joy in understanding discomfort and the art of delay and those types of things that are built into this journey. And that takes work in itself just to get there. And then once you get there, there's work to be done. So it never stops.
On a practical basis, for routines, or for a guy who says, okay, that sounds like something I'd want to do, but it sounds pretty vague in terms of reconnecting with the energies. On a
Yeah.
practical basis or a checklist basis, like what are some things that can actually help a guy do that?
Yeah, man. So we all have a morning, right? Even if you work overnight and you sleep all day and you wake up at 6 p.m. to do it all over again, that's everybody has a morning or a start to the day. What I have found with the thousands of people that I've coached in my own personal journey is having what I call a mastery morning is essential. And there's a few key things. A mastery morning sets you up to achieve three quick wins. Okay. You get a physical win, you get a mental win, you get a spiritual win. I'll give you an example of what a mastery morning could look like. You wake up, and first thing that you experience could be you just being grateful for waking up. Okay. But even if that doesn't happen, that's fine. You wake up, you're moving around, you start to drink 1 liter of water. I'm giving you my routine. I drink 1 liter of water to give myself inner bath. This is my first way to really start to appreciate myself. Okay. Because I know I haven't had water for however long I've been asleep. So it's essential. Then I go into what's called mobility minutes. And this is me just checking in with my body. So if anybody were looking in my window, they would think I was crazy because what I'm doing is I'm just moving around. I'm checking in. I'm rolling my wrist. I'm rolling my neck. I'm bending, doing squats, checking in with my body to see how things feel that day. And then I'll go through 5 or 10 minutes of mobility in whatever area feels like it needs the most work. Okay. So now I'm activating my body. And then what I do is I sit down to write. So my goal and my mission is to write 1,000 words every day. I don't always get there, but I do my best to write 1,000 words a day. And it can be something that's very specific to a project I'm working on, or it could be just stream of consciousness. Let me just write, get whatever's coming out of my mind. And then I'll read 5 pages of a book that's relevant to what I'm working on. And then I'll go out and I'll walk or run 5 miles. This is my mastery morning. So with all those things in place, and actually when I get back from the walk or run, I'll sit down before I get into the rest of my day and I'll do what's called intentional quiet time. A lot of people call it meditation. So intentional quiet time is anywhere from 2 to 10 minutes of just taking in with intention the man I choose to be that day. See myself facing challenges, how I would deal with those things, being resourceful, being radically responsible for all the things that I have to do in my day. And so that routine right there gives me a mastery morning. I got my physical win, I got my mental win, I got my spiritual win. And what I found is that anybody who's willing to tap into that then your energy is going to be different the rest of the day because you spent your first part of your day taking care of you so that you can pour into all the other things that are important to you the rest of the day.
Yeah, I think all of that is fantastic, but I can't help point out that you just slipped in the 5 mile run at the end. You just said, and we just do a 5 mile run on top of that.
That is not a prerequisite. You don't have to do that. For somebody else, it might be a 5 minute walk, you know?
But I think it's a testament to the work that you've done and the consistency through which you've done it. Because and maybe you can speak to this, because what I found is I go through bouts and spurts of discipline, sort of in anything, but definitely with regards to my morning routine. And as I'm looking back on it, it's the kids are sick, so let me use that as an excuse to sleep in. Oh,
Mhm.
whatever is super stressful. Like I just find my reasons to fall off, and then once I'm off, it's like getting back on is becomes sort of the
Mhm.
challenge. And maybe that is just the game. It's just like you fall off the horse and you get back on. But that seems to be the obstacle for me, is remaining consistent enough to make any really, really significant headway in regards to writing a book, or these sort of long-term projects that can come from really being disciplined over a long period of time.
Yeah, that's real. Like all of us are colliding with reality every day, and all of our realities are different. And so, again, what you're speaking of talks more about the importance of why systems thinking and having a system for yourself is important, because when human behavior or defaults do try to kick in, which they will, there's a system there to hold up the more valuable pattern. And so, creating what I call the reps operating system is important. Like reps, you see, I had the shirt on. So reps are basically these small actions that you can take in the moment that matter toward whatever your vision is. Okay, so reps stands for repetitive excellence produces success. And that first word is important, repetitive. And if something's going to be repetitive, it's important to create a system around it. And there's a lot of things we do every day without even thinking about it. All of us have a system created right now that, whether we've consciously created it or not, it's there. And so now that we have that awareness, what's important is taking a look at the inputs that are going into the system, because the inputs that are going in are definitely creating the reality that we have in our lives, which is different for all of us.
One of the things that I noticed just in hearing your story is that it seemed like whether it was a conscious or subconscious intention, there was a focus on your environment and changing your environment and being mindful of your environment, or at least that seemed to play a role in your sort of evolution. And I'm curious, when it comes to things like a morning routine or things like repetition, what role does your environment, whether that's physical or sort of, you can take that however you want, but the space that you're in and that you're working in, what sort of role does that play in your evolution?
Man, I appreciate that you asked that, because I just connected the dots. I never considered that when my mom shipped me off to my aunt's house when I was 17 years old and rebellious and definitely going down the wrong track, that was a change in my environment. And I don't know if that subconsciously stuck with me, but today I talk about environment a lot because it does affect everything. And so, I keep talking about a system, but as a system does create these environments around you that help to take the actions that we know are valuable. So,
You've
and
done something unique though, in that you've been able to live sort of I don't know if I'd call it like a nomadic lifestyle, but you've been able to travel a lot and move around. And one of the things that I sort of fall into is like, man, I've got to stay. If I start to travel, that's when my habits go out. All right. Or if I, don't have
mm,
my routine or my supplements here at home or whatever it is. And so with regards to also environment, it seems like you've been able to also remain flexible in that regard as well. Is that a skill that you sort of had to develop, or how did that play out for you as you were sort of moving around and traveling and sort of living this sort of, I don't want to call it non-traditional because that has a lot of it's a loaded word, but like, not the typical
yeah.
waking up and working in the same place every single day.
It definitely, like, moving around definitely requires that I be more mindful, because it would be very easy to say, all right, we're going to travel here, we're going to be here for 3 months, and then I look back over that 3 months and I didn't get any fitness in, I was eating bad, and all the things that were valuable to me as a man went out the window. And all of a sudden I'm asking myself, why do I feel this way? Like, why is my energy down? Why is my drive off? Why is my ambition not there? Why is my body soft? Like, these are the things, and I've gone through those, and I've had to experience that in my younger years. And, I got up to 230 pounds. I was sloppy, and this was a long time ago, but I had to experience that in order to realize, there are some non-negotiables that have to be in place no matter where I am, and no matter where I go. This toolbox of non-negotiables goes with me, and one of those is my fitness. So the first thing I do when I get anywhere, no matter where I'm traveling, is I'm looking for, where can I get my workouts in? Where's the gym? I'll call a gym before we get there to see, hey, what does your 7-day pass look like? Those types of things. So I'm doing this recon work. What kind of environment am I going to be in? Am I in walkable distance to a bunch of different restaurants? What kind of restaurants are they? Is there a grocery store available? It's just these non-negotiables that get put into place after working through a system that didn't work for me to get what I wanted. What it worked for me to do was to get up to 230 pounds and be, and fat and sloppy. And the recognition and having to go through that and knowing I didn't want to feel that way is what prompted the change. And I've seen a lot of men that I've coached where they're busy executives, they make a ton of money, they're successful on paper, but the success on purpose is missing because they don't feel good about themselves when they look in the mirror. They don't feel good about how they're showing up in their relationships. They're not doing any adventure. And so, again, the reps operating system allows for me to have these 4 power pillars in place no matter where I go. I want an adventure. I want to be doing work that's worthwhile. I want to be involved in real relationships, and I want to have my strong self intact at all times. Those are non-negotiables. And so once a man gets that, it's a toolkit that goes everywhere.
We got into the R, and what does the E stand for in reps?
Excellence.
Tell me about
Yeah.
excellence and how that plays into the system.
Well, when you think about doing a rep, imagine you're in the gym, right? And you're doing a bench press. There's lots of ways to do a bench press, right? You can take that bar off. You can, say, all right, I want to get 50 reps. You can just start throwing that thing around. Your whole body is moving. The bench is moving. Like your weights are about to fall off. We can call those reps, right? But they're not reps of excellence. Now, if we're looking to engage the entire body and get the most out of that movement, then a different way to think is, all right, I'm going to take this 1 rep at a time, take this bar off. I'm going to create the necessary tension in the body. As I come down with the weight, I'm going to lower it slowly, squeezing my back on the way down so I can get the benefits of the back doing the work during this exercise. And then as I press, I'm going to press strong, full lockout, keep the chest up, and really engage the muscles that are supposed to be engaged. That's a rep of excellence. Now, here's the thing. The 50 reps, just knocking them out, they feed the ego really well. Oh, I got 50 reps. The reps of excellence, you're not able to do as many of them, but the quality of those reps yields so much more for a longer period of time. You avoid injuries, you build more muscle. And this is the case in the case of doing a bench press, right? That excellence transcends everything we do throughout the day. How can I have excellence in my conscious communication with you right now? The rep I'm doing right now, having a conversation with you, I want to bring excellence to that. Right? If I'm scattered, if I go pick up my phone and I start, doing things on my phone, and I shut all the lights off and my lighting's bad, and I turn my microphone off. Well, we're still getting the rep in. We're still here, but it's not an excellent rep. So excellence is a mindset that you bring to every interaction with everything throughout your day. So it requires presence.
I love that. And I love excellence for a lot of reasons. And I've shared a little bit, maybe I shared this with you, but I grew up and I still am a Raiders fan, and Al Davis, the owner is, a commitment to excellence. And over the last couple of decades, you wouldn't say that we sort of exemplified that. But I always enjoyed that as a motto, right? Because there's not a lot of teams like that that have a motto like that. And I love excellence over perfection. I'll be honest that You provided some clarity in that as you were explaining this press rep. And I always thought that, excellence was just sort of a mindset, and it was sort of this nebulous,
Mm.
intangible thing that you just sort of aspire to. And I was like, okay, if that's what it is, great. But really, as you were talking about it, it appears that excellence also requires mindfulness, right? The ability to be in the moment, because it's that one rep at a time sort of thing. And then also there's a sense of education or being informed or attention to detail, right? You were talking about and working through all of these parts of proper technique that if I was not educated in weightlifting or in exercise or whatever, and I didn't know to do those things, then I could be mindful and I could try. But if I don't have the technique to back it up, or I'm not as skilled enough to back it up, then the output and the effect is lessened, right? And so you really crystallize that it's not just about aspiring to be excellent, but that there are actually, parts of it that require someone to improve and inform themselves, and then to be intentional with that on a individual moment to moment sort of basis.
Yeah, no doubt. Excellence requires presence. You brought that up. And also requires resourcefulness. Because let's say you are going to bench press for the first time and say maybe, or we'll use this anything. Say you're going to do anything for the first time as a man, right? And you're not quite educated on it, but you have a vision of like how this can be done. Well, that vision right there is already tapping into resourcefulness. But then you get to a part where you're hung up. You're like, no, I'm not really sure what to do. When we're tapping into excellence in that moment, we start to receive information, right? Like, all right, here's a solution. I could do this. If I'm like really there and thinking about it, then things start to emerge. So excellence provides that. What I found for a lot of people right now in this distracted, fast moving world where, we're getting notifications here and, social media button is under our thumb before we even know it. And we're scrolling, we're being taken out of the presence. And it's very hard, and I would venture to say impossible, to have excellence when you're not in this moment. But there's so much information when you are here that provides that excellence. So, yeah, presence is key.
Yeah. What about P? What does the P stand for?
Produces, right? So it's just the output of this rep system, right? It produces. So repetitive excellence produces, and then the S is success. I'll lump these together. So producing success is very making it very clear that success is an outcome of the system you've created in your life. And success is something that you get to define on your own. Your success could look completely different from anybody else's, and it should. That's the only way for it to feel the way it needs to feel in your life. There are these ideas of success that are out there in society. How much money do you have? What kind of material possessions do you have? How much do you get to travel? Like all these external things, which are fine. They're fine to have. But I know plenty of people who have that success on paper. But when it comes to fulfillment, meaning, and purpose, which is the success that happens on the inside, right? The peace, the truth, the love, it's fleeting. Like, look up, just stay on my outside. Don't go in my closet. Stay on the outside because I got everything groomed just right. But if you go in the closet, right? If you go inside and look at what's going on, there's a void there. And so what I'm encouraging men through this reps peaceful rebellion that I'm building is to really look at repetitive excellence produces success. Define what success means for you so that the reps you put in align with that success. Make sure that success is meaningful to you. Make sure you're the one who designed it and that that the worthwhile work you're doing every day leads toward that. That's what reps stands for. If you have any deeper questions, we can go as deep as you want to.
Well, what's interesting for me is, yeah, and I'm only a sample size of one, but I'd imagine that a lot of guys sort of fall into similar patterns in the sense that if I get too wrapped up into the social media feed, or I get too wrapped up into what's happening out there or over there or with whomever, and these people and that people and all the uproar that is so easy to sort of get caught up into, I lose my ability to focus on what I define success as. It seems to me to be harder to focus on those because I start asking questions. Well, damn, what's the point? Or what's it going to look like? Or what, all these sort of not so helpful questions, frankly. And so I think your system is so important that if you are focused on excellence, it keeps you honest and again focused on what's important and away from the drifting that can come so happen when you
Mhm.
don't have a system like this, or you're not, being repetitive in your habits. Because otherwise, I feel like the world and how it's going right now is so easy to just sweep people away and help them lose what's really important to them.
What you're bringing up, I call society's strategic system of traps. And this is not to place any of us in a victim role at all. But it's just to have an understanding that every story has an enemy, right? Or a pit or a hole. And so the enemy to our masculinity and our mastery and the excellence we want to bring to this world is being lost, fat, distracted, and all the things that this strategic system of traps is creating, right? It's creating so much convenience, so much comfort, and so much unhealthy dopamine that men are losing themselves to all of that. And so my mission is, and I know this is something that's important to you, is to call men back into the deepest, truest version of themselves. Come back home. Come back home. It can be scary because there's a mirror to look in, there's an honest conversation to have, there's truth to be told. But on the other side of that is this version of you that has been scratching and clawing to get out, has always been available, just needed permission and space. And so let's put the reps in, one rep at a time.
Right. Because another thing that seems to be, what I really enjoy about your sort of system and how I can see it being effective is that it also incorporates a spiritual aspect as well. Because I find that if that's missing in these sort of things, and in instances where I've sort of tried to take this on and just personal development my way through it, there becomes a moment where it feels very, very lonely, or you run out of faith, frankly, because to your point, you're like, we are incomplete. And also, I think that's a misinterpreted perspective in the sense that we're not seeing how we are aligned with source or God or whatever sort of you want to call. And so if you have that included, then whilst you're going through all of this, like that's a source of strength as well, or the faith is still there. And so while it's hard getting up, or it's cold outside, or like all the sort of excuses that we sort of make, it becomes a little easier to push through that when there is whatever sort of spiritual aspect, and guys can decide that for their own. But when that's a part of it, it seems to be a little more sustainable.
Most definitely, because like I was saying earlier, like us humans have this default, right? And that default has been established through all of this indoctrination that we've had for however long you've been alive, which is different for all of us. But you tapped into what I call the three levels of living, right? The physical level, the mental level, the spiritual level, which is why that mastery morning is so important, because it taps into all three of those and gets them dealt with first thing before ever interacting with another human. So, yeah, that spiritual side is important because it's at the top of the stream and it affects everything downstream. It affects the mental, how the thoughts turn into actions, which the actions turn into the physical. So it's all connected. And so the importance of everything I'm talking about today is systems thinking is crucial for any man who wants to master his own masculinity. Be the man that matters to yourself first and then to your world. And when I'm talking to you, I'm talking to myself. Again, we have to tap in and do these reps every day.
Are there any other favorite concepts or terms? I love that you've created sort of definitions and given some structure to a lot of the things that we guys sort of go through. Are there any other things that we haven't touched on today, or even ones that are worth going into more that you think are relevant to guys who are listening?
One of the biggest challenges that I found for men is conscious communication. And there comes this point where we hit our rock bottom or we go through our challenges and whatever it may be, where what I've seen is there's change that has to happen. And like you said, we can feel like we're in a silo and doing this change on our own. And this is where conscious communication comes in, being able to talk openly with the people who are around us who other men in our lives and say, hey, look, here's what I'm going through. I just want you to know that you may see me being a little bit different. I'm working through this. That's conscious communication. If you're married, going to your spouse and saying, hey, look, you may have seen me showing up like this. What I'm working on is this, like listing things out in a way where you're taking responsibility for it. You're not looking for somebody to mother you or take care of you. What you're looking for is to be open about your situation and also be resourceful in your solutions so that your spouse, your wife can feel safe with you. And so that would be my biggest invitation is as you go through anything that requires change, be sure to consciously communicate with everyone involved so that there's not a lot of resistance on your path. Otherwise, people just may not understand what it is that you're doing, and then they're going to apply their own experience to it because all they can see is from the outside. They didn't hear anything from you.
Yeah, I think that, guys, and I'm talking to myself mostly, but I know guys can do all the inner work that they want. At a certain point, they're going to have to interact with another human being. They can go and be a monk in a cave somewhere, but I think most guys who are listening to this show, that's not the life that they want, right? They want the tools to be able to take into the world and sort of be a man, of the world. And I think that the communication part is so crucial, right? That if we do all the work and then we blow it when we're trying to communicate it, it's like fumbling, it on the baton pass, right? And in Olympics races, it's like it's the critical moment of exchange. And so I think you raise a really good point there. Any favorite, whether it be modalities or you've probably adjusted or innovated on a lot to sort of make them your own, but whether it's workout routines, habits, books, exercise types, you seem like someone who's very practical. So I'm curious if there's any other tools or techniques that are favorites of yours that guys might enjoy from hearing about.
Yeah. So at the beginning of every year, what I do is I write down a word that is important for me to integrate into my identity so that my identity is kind of shifting and growing every year intentionally. Right. And so a book that I read at the end of the last year was called Liminal Thinking by Dave Gray. And I don't know, have you read this book?
No.
Okay. So the idea of liminal is that it's a threshold, it's a doorway, it's an empty space between two different things. Okay. And the way Dave Gray explains it is that that's the space where chaos happens because not enough people are willing to explore what's really going on in that space. Now, let me make this more real. When we talk about beliefs, right, the way beliefs are created, there's a very structured path to the belief. And then once a belief is created, there's a lot that's going on inside that bubble of beliefs that creates a lot of tension between two humans. So here we go. So a belief, the first step to the belief is that you have an experience, right? You have some kind of experience in life. And then you get to the next step where you pull whatever is relevant from that experience and you use it for whatever your needs are at that time, which we all have different needs. And then from there, whenever you find what's relevant, you go to the next step and you start to make assumptions. You make these assumptions. And then once you've made enough assumptions, you go to the next steps and you start forming conclusions. Once those conclusions are formed, then a belief is established. This is the 5-step pattern to get to these beliefs. Now, here is where it gets real challenging. Now you're standing on top of this belief. Okay. Solid ground is here. You're standing on top of this belief pyramid that you've built, and you believe you're standing on solid ground. And so, what you do, because a belief is so deeply ingrained, is that you, without even thinking about it, you invite and kind of pull other people in who kind of believe the same way so that y'all can reinforce each other. Now what's being created is this bubble of obviousness. Like, isn't it obvious that this is the way it is? Right. And you and all your people who have gathered together are believing this, not understanding that there's also somebody else who took 5 steps and they've got their people and they have their own bubble of obviousness. And you're all of everybody is just reinforcing. It's called self-sealing logic. You're just sealing that bubble off tighter and tighter because your beliefs, your actions, and your results are confirming that you're right. Well, what liminal thinking does is it shines a light between down, back down those 5 steps to ask a question like, what is possible if I believe different? If I create a different belief? If I just start to look at it, right? If I have a conflict with somebody, obviously that person has a belief, I have a belief. And if we're not understanding each other, it's because we're self-sealing our logic inside of our bubbles of obviousness. So if somebody can take charge and say, hey, you know what, let me shine a light on my own belief system to see where can I be better here. That concept has really changed the way I communicate with other people, including my spouse. And just it's really expanded my mind to all the possibilities that there really are, because my possibilities are not the only one. Like there's endless possibilities. So if you haven't read Liminal Thinking, I would suggest picking that up. And it's a very short read. I got to check out the book right here. Short read, small book, Liminal Thinking by Dave Gray. Create the change you want by changing the way you think.
Yeah, I love those ideas really that allow you to go in and shift things at the root, at the foundational level, at the belief level, right? Because
Yeah.
James Clear sort of talks about how habits are, they're basically emblems, or I don't know what he uses, but they're manifestations of your beliefs. And so if you want to change a habit, then you have to go into the base level, to the source code of beliefs, and start there. And so you just really shine a light on a great tool to get in there and not only navigate for yourself, but also with other people too. Donovan, I got 2 questions for you. The first is, if people want to find out about you, get more connected with you, the Life is Reps community, what you're doing, where's the best place for people?
Yeah, I really only have 2 spots. I deleted all social media on September 25th of last year. And so I'm into these grassroots conversations and talking one-on-one with people and being on podcasts. So if you want to see what I have going on, you can just go to lifeisreps.com, just like it sounds. And then if you want to check out the newly launched podcast, you can go to youtube.com/lifeisreps. And that's the YouTube channel. And I'll be putting out a video every 2 weeks right now. The mission is to get into a weekly rhythm, but I'm not being forceful with that. I'm really just being conscious about the energy and the quality of what I'm putting out so that there's value there. So those are the 2 spots.
And we'll link those up for the listeners as always. And Donovan, last question for you. In your opinion, what is the definition of modern masculinity?
Modern masculinity is the art of being that man that matters. I think it's important for a man to recognize that within himself first, and then to be able to apply that to his world, which is not the whole world, it's his world.